But this vessel, which, like the Pharaon, came from Calcutta, had been in for a fortnight, while no intelligence had been received of the Pharaon. Such was the state of affairs when, the day after his interview with Monsieur de Bouville, the confidential clerk of the house of Thomson French of Rome presented himself at Monsieur Morrel's. Emmanuel received him. This young man was alarmed by the appearance of every new face, for every new face might be that of a new creditor, come in anxiety to question the head of the house. The young man, wishing to spare his employer the pain of this interview, questioned the newcomer. But the stranger declared that he had nothing to say to Monsieur Emmanuel, and that his business was with Monsieur Morrel in person. Emmanuel sighed, and summoned Cocles. Cocles appeared, and the young man bade him conduct the stranger to Monsieur Morrel's apartment. Cocles went first, and the stranger followed him. On the staircase they met a beautiful girl of 16 or 17, who looked with anxiety at the stranger. "Monsieur Morrel is in his room, is he not, Mademoiselle Julie?" said the cashier. "Yes, I think so, at least," said the young girl hesitatingly. "Go and see, Cocles. If my father is there, announce this gentleman." "It will be useless to announce me, mademoiselle," returned the Englishman. "Monsieur Morrel does not know my name. This worthy gentleman has only to announce the confidential clerk of the house of Thomson French of Rome, with whom your father does business." Okay, in one quick passage, we get a bunch of faces here. Emmanuel, I'm assuming, was that 20-some-year-old man working for Morrel that we saw in the first passage of this chapter. Emmanuel being nervous about every person who comes in because they might be asking for more money, which means the quicker downfall of the company, which, I think speaks to a little bit of dedication beyond just being in love with Morrel's daughter. Speaking of Morrel's daughter, we also get her, a beautiful girl of 16 or 17, who also looks at the stranger with a bit of anxiety. So there's just an air of unease in the Morrel world. Everyone poses another danger. Everything just seems so unstable that one little leaf blowing and landing on the side of the car, tipping on the cliff, could send it careening over into a fiery crash, if you'll allow me the metaphor. But who do we have here but the Englishman from the previous chapter talking to the prison inspector? The Englishman from the firm of Thomson and French. This is Dante, right? Now, here's a question for you, though. My foolishness aside in being tricked a couple times by Dumas, why do we think that Dumas isn't ever revealing Dante? And I don't mean like Dante revealing himself or being revealed to the characters. Why is Dumas holding back at showing Dante putting on his disguise, taking off his disguise, even using Dante's name while he is in disguise? I can only speculate because there's so much book left to go, but it's clearly not unintentional on Dumas' part. And I don't know if it's simply just to keep up air of mystery and making Dante enigmatic, or if there's going to be some greater reveal later on in which this distancing effect is necessary. Maybe it's that having gone through that long imprisonment phase, it would be exhausting and not as entertaining to constantly be in Dante's mind as he sees his friend suffering. Like, if we walked into Morrel's situation and got all the information that we've already gotten from these few passages, but they were filtered through Dante having to live the anguish of seeing a man he respected, his benefactor, living in squander or, tipping perilously on the edge of that cliff, as I said, it would be kind of oppressive. It would be burdensome to have to, as a reader, live in that mindset. So taking us out of that POV and making Edmund more of a force of change for good or ill, in a weird way, is making us more aligned with each of the characters he's interacting with. I'm thinking back to the Caderousse story, and we, outside of the few emotional outbursts that Dante had because of his father, most of the time we are kind of inside Caderousse's mind. And here it's not a singular POV, but we are witnessing Dante entering through the perspective of these other characters. through Emmanuel, through Cocles, through his daughter, they're all seeing Dante. I wouldn't say they're sizing him up, but they are looking at him as like, are you threat or friend? And I'm wondering if that is an intentional part of Dumas' characterization of Dante, because one thing it definitely does do, and if you have a book of this size, you kind of need this, is to make Dante a kind of mythic figure. And we've talked a lot about how Dumas uses mythology in his writing. So this is him employing devices in order to create a myth, not just call forth a myth, to create a metaphor for whatever situation is happening, but he's actually creating a myth through Dante. And, myths are created a lot of times by the different interpretations, the word of mouth, as you pass it along from person to person, without ever really knowing the reality or the facts. So each character that we see interact with Dante is going to have their own version of him, and all of those individual versions, when put together in a tapestry like this book, creates a mythic figure. At any rate, there's a lot that came forth from today's passage, and it's just setting up a lot. So Morrel is now here. Dante is now here. We see the stage set for Emmanuel, the daughter, the ruin of Morrel & Son business. And we haven't talked about this at all, and I'll talk about this maybe more tomorrow, is the fact that everything is hinging on the Pharaon returning, and as that first sentence said, another vessel came in, but there was no intelligence about the Pharaon, so it seems to be missing in action. How is that going to affect things? Let's find out as we continue here with more of Chapter 29 tomorrow. Until then, okay, goodbye. The Countdown of Monte Cristo is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. This show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Theme song by Magic Solo. If you want to support the show and others like it, visit patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.